Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good ever what time of day it happens to be that you're listening to the Tattoo Teacher podcast. On this episode, I have the amazing Matt Pittman. Now, Matt is an educator first and foremost. He is, he's a busy man. He's doing a tremendous amount and he's done a tremendous amount in a short career to better the students that he deals with every day. Matt, welcome to the Tattoo Teacher podcast.
Thank you. Really happy to be here. Yeah, nice little punchy intro. It's still a bit embarrassed sitting on the other side listening to it, but no, I'm a fan, so I'm here. I'm ready to be on the other end of the mic.
Well, Matt, it's great that you could join me and I appreciate it. We're getting to, I know I'm on break, so I'm not sure where you are in term time, but
2 weeks left, so
you
it's
get to
getting there.
you get to the pointy end. Everyone's getting a bit tired. Thanks for taking the time to join me tonight. I really appreciate it. You have got a tremendous amount of personal study. Well, I'm just trying to think of the word because I'm on holiday, so my brain's switching off. You've got your bachelor's degree, you've got diplomas, you've got multiple masters, and now you're working on your doctorate. Now, someone doesn't do all that sort of stuff just because. There's got to be a reason for it. There's got to be a why behind it and a why you're in education. So what is your why? Why are you doing all this?
I think it changes a lot, and every time I write it down, it becomes something else. I think that the easiest way to sort of think about all of this study, because like I look at like my HEX bill, for instance, and just wonder, if it'll ever be paid off. So there's a lot of different things, and it's obviously sacrifice from family and just general time, but it's just because I never liked shifting completely to being the teacher. Like I like being a student.
Oh, okay.
And I think that making sure that I'm always pushing myself makes me hopefully better at being on the other side and being up the front of the classroom. I fill all my time and it's like a compulsion. And I don't know if it's a healthy one. I don't know. I've certainly had lots of conversations with lots of people about how sustainable it is. But at the moment, it just makes me happy to sit and do something with purpose. And I think sometimes, there's lots of different people and some people like to just sit and watch a movie or, go for a run or whatever it might be. Everyone's got something, but I really like just sitting and thinking. And sometimes at the end of a day, like today, I already feel like I'm struggling to put sentences together. And it's just a Monday, but sometimes a little bit of provocation helps you get there. And one of the things that really I've found beneficial about further study, especially, is the community behind it. Like you sit with a group of people who are in a similar boat. I don't think that there's many people at all that are going to university these days in a further study capacity as a postgrad looking to progress up any ranks or anything. Like you have to be there with purpose. And so I think being in a room, whether it's virtual or physical, with a whole heap of people that share a common purpose, like that's something that perhaps to be honest, I don't get a lot of outside of that space. I think life's too busy. Schools have become less about the collective and more about the cliques and the faculties. And so this is a really diverse group of people who all want to push themselves a little bit. And that's the draw for me, I guess. It's that push to always be a learner, even if that costs a bit of time and money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anything worthwhile always takes time. And it's painful at times. I mean, any growth causes grief. There's a pinch point somewhere. It's how much does this mean to you? How important is this? How much support do I have to continue on with this? Because I know, like, I wouldn't be where I am today without the support of my wife and my children. And because I mean, I've dragged them up and down the East Coast, out to Central West New South Wales. I quit full-time work to go to full-time study, change careers in a time where I just had our first child. So this, we're talking nearly 30 years ago, but I just had our first child, and I'm quitting full-time work to go to
Mm.
uni. And people go, well, you're a nut job. And I'm thinking, maybe, and you're probably right, but it was, I want to be better for me, but I want better for my family.
Mm. And I think that's, when you said pinch point, that's the first thing I always think about. Like, I could just study forever. I think like it doesn't bother me. I don't get super frustrated with it. I think as much as your assessments and things or whatever you need to do, your paper is irritating, and it goes in waves. It's the thing that keeps you going. It's the anchor. But the pinch point is always, how much of an impact is this potentially selfish pursuit of learning? How much is that having on the family? On my daughter and on my wife, and then at what point is there, so is especially my wife's support and graciousness, at what point am I perhaps taking advantage of that? And so I guess my daughter's almost 3, and so it's in the last couple of months she's gone full toddler and changed it up, and so it's becoming tougher. And so I think that's where that that chat about sustainability comes in. And I think you know that's the lesson I'm learning at the moment. I've got to stop taking things on. Like, I can finish what I'm working on at the moment, but I've got to stop taking things on, because, I've never bought into the time argument, because I've never allowed myself to have time.
Okay.
So like, as a teacher, as a leader, when I feel like I don't have time to do something, it's probably my fault.
Okay.
That's how I look, because I've filled up the other moments. And now there's with a young family, there's a greater pressure to maybe take the foot off the pedal.
Yeah.
And learn from them, and learn and connect in a different capacity. A little bit of life learning rather than book learning.
Yeah. And I mean, there's about 1,000 questions I want to go down there, but the first one is, do you see, because, you talk about study and you talk about learning, do you see a difference between the two? Because some people study and you talk to them and they don't know a thing.
Mm.
Some people don't do, they don't go to university, they don't have, a diploma or whatever, but they are very learned people. So do you see a distinct difference in studying compared to learning?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I talk about often is this gap between education and learning. And I think for students, like, that gap's humongous at the moment. But if I was to think about what I would classify as study, I would say, in a university sense, as a student, study is anything that I haven't chose to pursue. I'm doing somebody else's task because it's a hurdle I need to achieve. Whereas the learning is when I jump off that hurdle and I have the freedom to now, well, where do I want to take this? And so now I'm doing my own research because I'm interested. And I think it's the same in schools. We need, you have your education part and you tick some boxes, but then we don't give the students the freedom to learn. And so, yeah, for me, it's the frustration is in doing the things that you need to do. And then you're rewarded, especially with something like a doctorate, you're rewarded with a big chunk of freedom to go and make your own mistakes, potentially. There's certainly a lot of things that I've doubled back on or cut out, or spent a lot of time on and then abandoned. And that's the learning, because it's the structure has been removed and I'm kind of just going for it, and hopefully I'll finish up where, at the end where I wanted to be. But how I get there, that's all the learning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just from, my own teaching career, that learning aspect has slowly been shortened and smaller, or pushed out to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And education, in the inverted commas that we all talk about, education sometimes overpowers that. And so, and it only makes sense that students are not wanting to come to school, that they're, causing chaos in the classroom because they're not. I mean, I know personally for me, I caused chaos as a teenager, but it's because I look back now and I think certain classes I was challenged and I was given freedom and I behaved to a better part. But then the classes that I wasn't challenged in and that I wasn't given freedom to explore the way I needed to explore, that was it. No holds barred there. So
Yeah. Oh, look, I think the big difference in, if I think back to my schooling or trying to look at my own practice now, I think it's the difference is in, am I asking questions or giving students time to discover answers? Like, are they answering my question that I've set and I have an answer in mind and I'm going to steer them towards it? Or am I putting a question out there and going, see where you end up? What's your answer? We'll collate it with, this answer and this answer, and together we'll figure out how many answers there are. That to me, that's that sense of discovery that's missing, and I think like it's been whittled away. I think is the best way to think about it, because it's been a slow kind of shaving away of it until the point now where there's no discovery in preparing for a test. You're preparing to answer someone else's questions. And I think that's not curiosity, and that's not meaningful, and that to me is not learning. And so it's hard because we're mandated to do so much, and that's only seems to be getting worse. But within that scaffolding and that box, or whatever you'd like to call it, like, we can reintroduce curiosity. And I think that is what the teacher's job is. If we're not focusing on doing that, then I think potentially hand teaching over to AI. Like, if we're just going to instruct, then the chatbots can do it. Like, it'll achieve the same thing. Students will still perform however they're going to perform on their tests, but they won't have any of that human connection. They won't be more functional out in the world. They'll have knowledge.
yeah, and but I can't remember who said it, but knowledge without experience, you have no wisdom, and that's where we come into it. And I mean, you talk about the joy of learning, the joy of curiosity, and you're talking about the research that you're doing for your doctoral studies. But then you've mentioned you've got a young child, and from experience, I'm blessed now. I've got my first grandchild, so
That's so good.
so I'm seeing it's one of the joys of all the joy, none of the stress. So
Yeah.
but from from my own children, like, and you're probably seeing, and you've probably seen it, there's sustainable curiosity. They're just a thirst for what is happening, and trying stuff and throwing things off the top of stairs, and breaking things and touching stuff, and letting the dog lick the face, and all they're just exploring their little world because they want to know. They're not, and I think
They're not afraid to ask, I think is what it is, because they don't know what that fear of getting it wrong is.
Yeah.
They haven't been introduced to it yet. The best thing that my daughter does is she'll never use anything in the way that our adult brain would say, this is how this should be used. Like, it's a cup. It's for holding liquid. Well, that's not a cup anymore. It's a spaceship, or it's whatever she comes up with. Like, the fact that I can't even come up with something on the spot shows you, how we have wired our brains for really, like, function rather than discovery. Like, we've turned it towards yes or no and removed the maybe. And so, when you get a yes, you act on the yes. When you get a no, you act on the no. Maybe requires you to take another step. And we don't take that step anymore because we don't need to. If I can just pick up my phone and find an answer immediately, I might go on a rabbit hole on my phone. But am I learning, or am I just, filling in time? Am I asking meaningful questions, or am I just looking for the next thing? It's unbridled curiosity. It's unrestricted. She'll run around until she gets hungry, and then she'll stop because she is hungry. And then once that's sorted out, off she goes again until she falls asleep. Like, it's, we've done a really good job of reining everything in. And I think that's the teacher's job in the future, is not to worry about the tools that you're using or whatever it might be. It's to think about, why are we doing it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, science, still today, scientists are just exploring and they're just trialing and they're just seeing. And sometimes with no other reason, just because, what if, and so there's that curiosity there. But I think there's something so different with when it comes to students and children, especially younger children, that there's like I said, they don't understand what failure is. They just want to know. They just want, and they'll push something to see what happens when it gets pushed. And if, so there's all that curiosity. You mentioned AI about, look, I am 100% certain that I could go and learn anything, get the knowledge so much quicker by just jumping online, putting a couple of questions in, just double checking it with maybe some more reputable websites. But, I don't need to talk to anyone.
Yeah.
But I know that, one of your drives as well is about the relationship. For me as well in the classroom, relationship first, then learning will come second. But I know for you that, relationship and building that human connectedness is super important.
Yeah, it's the thing that I think is driving me to do a lot of the extra, let's call it extracurricular stuff that I do. But it's also the thing that keeps me in a school. Certainly, once you start speaking on a topic and people start listening, that's when they try to draw you out of a school. But connection is so desperately needed back in schools, and I look at all of this research and it's just fascinating, and it goes from, it's conversations like we're having now about toddlers, all the way up to, neuroscientists doing scans of the brain and looking at, such a breadth of information on this huge continuum. But all this research comes back to how much of an essential human need it is to feel connected to other humans around you. And yet we've got this huge disconnect in schools, between the school and the community, within the school, between teachers and students, and parents certainly are very disconnected. And we're not having this conversation, and we're not pursuing this as perhaps one of the major causes of schools not functioning as we'd like them to. And, there's so many great people doing so many great things, but there's just not enough talk about connection in a school sense. And I've kind of taken it on as a bit of a mission to try and get people to pay attention to it. Because I really think that somewhere in the next 5 to 10 years, this will be the thing that kicks off. And we'll all be talking about how we need to be connected to each other. And I'm not against AI. I actually quite like it. I think it's useful. I think it's really, really interesting. I don't know enough about it, to be honest, but I try and play around with it. But I can tell as a non-expert that this is going to absolutely change the game in ways that we can't even fathom at the moment. Like, what we're doing now is just kind of child's play with what this technology is probably doing in other sectors and in the background and whatever it might be. So then the thing that will set schools apart, or the thing that will set people apart, is our ability to work with each other. Yet schools are so isolating. And I just think all of this research I look at from the last decade and more is all about, there will be these big cataclysmic things like staff leaving in huge waves, and there'll be kids that don't want to attend school anymore. And, in 10 years ago, everyone was like, imagine, here we are.
Yeah.
Like, And it was kind of like prophesized a little bit, because that research isn't linked to AI, or isn't linked to a device, or some kind of new technology, or it just hasn't been perhaps paid the attention that I believe it should have. And so that's where I've kind of thrown myself into writing and speaking, and trying to, where I can, spread a bit of a message so that it becomes something that is towards the forefront of the mind. Because the value of a school to me is in its ability to bring people together from, you know, different cultures and different backgrounds, and we share a community, yet we're not really sharing anything. Schools can be those places, but they're not.
Yeah, it's like we were talking. The learning and the curiosity is being pushed out by the paperwork. And look, there's a lot of important stuff that we do. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not all against a lot of the documentation that we have to keep, and the PD that we have to do, because some of it is it's critical because of it can help, especially with what young people are dealing with these days. But also, in the way of understanding neurodiversity, and what that actually entails. And I've been, just dropped. Well, not dropped. I jumped into it. So I took on a new role as a design technology teacher in a school that is just ASD plus kids. That's it. That's all we have. Learning how to communicate with them, build relationship with students and children, that building relationship doesn't come natural to them. It's like, why do I need to talk to you? So some of them is just like, when I need to talk to you, I'll talk to you. But other than that, we don't need to have a conversation just to fill in space.
Yeah, that's right.
And so for me, as a very empathetic person and a very relationship based person, I'm finding that really, it's a challenge. A lot of people going, oh, the job must be so hard working with these kids. And I was like, no, the kids are fine, because I've just come from other schools, and like most teachers around Australia, if not the world, you've got 25, 30 kids in a classroom, and 10 of them are on IEPs. They're on, they're neurodiverse. They've got, or you've got broken families, you've got medications, you've got, someone didn't have breakfast. So dealing with kids is not the issue. The hardest part for me is, how do I reimagine what I need to do? So I have a start point, I have an end point, but this bit in the middle now, it's not just it's all over the place. So I've lost where I was going, but it's that challenge of dealing with these. It's an internal challenge. Kids are great. It's what am I trying to do in education?
It's that process of unlearning, and you've got to. And I think that no matter the school environment or the education environment, that's probably the most important thing for probably new graduates and people pretty new to the profession. Like, just start testing and test what they spoke to you about at university, and see where it works for you. I think a lot of personalization is lost in those first 5 years of being a teacher. If you don't focus in on the kids as people, then in a situation like yourself, you wouldn't be able to have the flexibility and the pliability to be able to make that work. You'd be stuck. And so you wouldn't be able to function in that school. And that internal battle between where you'd like things to go and where those students are leading it, like that, you wouldn't be able to fight that battle with yourself. And so, we've got to be thinking about the staff that we're putting into our schools as well, and what we're teaching them a school is and what it can't be. And again, we're going to talk about curiosity all night, it seems. It's just like, if you're not willing to be a learner yourself, I don't think that more than ever, teaching is for you.
Yeah.
Because I just say it's not worth it.
No.
If you can't walk away and say, here are the things I learned today, and then be able to, come to terms with the fact that at some stage you'll need to draw on that again and be happy to, and squish all that into everything else that is going on within the job. If you can't accept that you need to be a learner as well, then it's just not the job for you anymore. And I think that that's something that is completely missed in all the, I was going to call it propaganda, marketing for new teachers. It's just, oh, here's this incredible job. It is. It's really rewarding. It is. You get to work on helping to develop the future. You do. But it requires, you to be a little bit more vulnerable perhaps than what they're making out. And you've got to be okay with failing. And if we're teaching people to not fail at school and then expecting them to come back into a profession where I'm quite happy to say I fail daily, like in all kinds of things. Like I don't get my marking done when I should have got it done. I mispronounce a kid's name even though I have known that student for the whole year. Like I do all kinds of really silly things, and we just laugh and move on. If you can't develop that ability to laugh at yourself and go, well, that's a lesson for me, then it's just not the job for you. And I think that's the problem at the moment.
Yeah, and I think as well, one of the big things I say, Leo, I know when new teachers come in, it's like you don't have to be perfect. Like, because
Well, you can't be.
I'm certainly not perfect. I've learned how to do what I'm doing. Yes, I did have to try and prepare lessons and try and work through things. Now I've got the advantage of 20 years experience. So I can just roll into a classroom completely unprepared and still be reasonably successful. It's better if I'm prepared and I know where I'm going, like anything. If you don't prepare, it's about I'm not perfect. I can prepare the best lesson and then it can just turn to rubbish in a heartbeat. Or it can, maybe not to, it can, to, or, you can prepare the best lesson, but the best lesson that ends up being has nothing to do with what you prepared.
Yeah.
A kid asks a question and again, I think, more and more we're looking at curiosity, but a student will ask me a question and it's just like, I'm going to go with that one because that's an important question because maybe, Joe or Susie or George never asked a question, but they've asked that question. So we're gonna run with that, and we're gonna give it as much legs as we can give it because they're interested.
Yeah,
and that might be the hook, and then that might be the thing that changes that student's perspective on a whole range of things. It's where we try and capture the essence of that child so that they're seen, and sometimes they feel unseen, just like we do. It's just like, get your job done, get your job done, get your job done, and it's where, like, get your assignment in, get this. We're doing a test, we're doing this. So it's like they get lost in the noise.
Absolutely. And I think it's in a lot of my work at the moment, I talk about this connection journey, and relationships are the first landmark of that. And it's super important, all these things we do to kind of set the foundation for, this is me, and this is some things about me that'll help you understand where I'm coming from, and I'm going to learn some things about you that'll help me understand where you're coming from, and that's our relationship. And then the second is the belonging, and that's exactly what you're just talking about. And that's where connection is different to just having a relationship, because we're taking it a step further, and we're creating a safe place to be seen and valued and heard, and then doing things like giving ourselves permission to run with that tangent, and rewarding that curiosity and that question that might be left of field, but that is a genuine moment for learning and a genuine moment for connection, and establishing that sense of belonging, and making that young person or that staff member in the staff briefing or the staff meeting or whatever it is, like, not being afraid that 5 minutes off the plan will derail the whole lesson, and being able to understand that, or the meeting, and being able to understand that that question is the meeting. It is the lesson now. And it's our job to bring that, again, unbridled curiosity within that random question, bring that back to the content. And that becomes their in to the third landmark on the connection journey is meaning. And it's one that we're sorely missing.
Yeah.
Students don't feel connected to their work. They don't feel connected to each other. They don't feel connected to their school. There's no meaning behind any of the work that they're doing other than at some stage, this might be beneficial to a future version of you, but also it might not be. And so if I'm going back to being a 14-year-old, why would I do it? I probably and I was a pretty good student. I kind of bought into school, but I probably wouldn't anymore in this current environment where, well, what does it mean to me today? Because if I'm back being a teenager, I'm really selfish. How's this going to benefit me now?
Yeah.
And if you can't give me a great answer, or at least an example or a moment in the lesson where I go, yeah, then, why am I paying attention? Because, for some of these kids that are in senior secondary, 3 years ago, they were Googling things and having to sift through. And now they've got something that'll do it for them. In 3 more years, when they're at university, who knows what they'll be doing? We don't. But nothing about the mainstream kind of traditional model of school has really changed all that much. Certainly not the way we assess it. And so there's no meaning on a day-to-day basis. And that my argument for staff retention is the same thing. Eventually, if you're not re-establishing a sense of belonging and a sense of meaning in the work, and schools are responsible for doing that, you're just relying on a person to drive it themselves. And if you're piling on the work and the responsibilities, and they don't have time to reflect and give themselves that intrinsic motivation, and they're not getting it extrinsically, it starts to look, I imagine, like a job that probably isn't worth the sacrifice.
Yeah, definitely. I've made that. I've moved around a little bit, and then especially in the last probably 7 or 8 years, I've moved around quite a few schools for a number of reasons. But it had to do with the belonging and the value that was being placed or not placed on teaching staff, students, and it was just about, well, we just want to look good. We just want to be the highest in the league table. We want to have this, or we want to have that, or what, you just do your job because that's what And it's just like, hold on, how do I translate what I'm feeling? It's like I'm copying all this, and it's just going to bleed through to the students, unfortunately, and then they're going to, as like with connectedness, emotions are contagious. And if I'm coming to work begrudgingly, if I'm, just sour faced, kids pick up on that. They know, they know when you're off. Even if you're having a good day, they know if something's not right. And it's no wonder. And you see these especially younger teachers, they get to their 3 years and they're just like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because they think they need to be perfect in all things. They're not mentored, I don't think, nearly well enough in schools, just because the other teachers don't have the time. And universities aren't fully equipping them for the rigors of what professional life looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But also, they're not being told it's okay to close your laptop and go sit on the beach for the weekend and not do any work. Your reports will still be there on Monday, and you might have to stay back till 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock on a Monday night. But if you don't sit at the beach with your computer closed, you leave that at work or wherever it is, and you go and energize yourself, you're never going to make it.
Yeah. No, it's the fallacy of work-life balance. Like, a balance doesn't need to be 50-50, but we don't it's it's just not well understood. And I think, if I think about myself, it's certainly not 50-50. Like, but what I do that's not linked to my daily responsibilities or my leadership role is things that I choose to do. That choice is probably not well articulated across the profession. Like, take some time to choose what you want to do. We're very good at following instructions. We're probably, to some degree, or varying degrees, we're probably fairly good at following instructions when we were students. We might not have liked them and we might have pushed back a little bit and whatever it might have been. But at some stage, we were good at understanding what the job was and then getting it done in some capacity, because now we're very compliant as a profession, where we've come in and we do the job as prescribed. And it's this lack of feeling like we have permission to do anything different.
Yeah, we've got to follow the recipe because it's teach to test.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just doesn't get anywhere. I encourage a lot of students, like, because they're like, I want to do this, I want to go, I don't want to do school, I'm not going to university, I want to do. I said, that go and do it. I said, look, if I, because especially these both, it's not just guys want to go be chippies or mechanics or electricians. It's like, I got a lot of the female students are like, I want to go and do this. I said, go. Like, I'm going to say go for it, because you can go do 4 years, go do a trade, and you'll learn a lot. You'll make a little bit of money. You'll learn how to survive in the world, because, doing a trade is not easy. I've done one. And even if you don't stick with it, what you've got is experience that can't be bought. I said, but the tough part of that is you've got to try and convince your parents that university isn't important at this point in time.
Yeah. And that's where, parents are some of our most disconnected components of our school community. I mean, it's I imagine, not having been in this situation yet, I imagine it's very difficult to be a parent of school age kids. You are relying on, unless your school is absurdly excellent at sending information home on a regular basis, positive and constructive, let's call it, you are relying on your child to give you all the details that you need if you ever need to come in for a meeting or something. And so, I mean, is it any wonder some parents come in all fired up?
Yeah.
They can only work with what they've got, and we're not connecting them to the school community. And I think it's, I'm absolutely here for child safe policies and making sure, that people shouldn't freely be able to roll into a school and just have a look around. But we've got so many avenues to get the parents involved, and it's, there is a bit of a fear of what if a parent disagrees. Why does that matter? A parent can disagree.
And
It's what you do. It's what you do after they've disagreed. That is the part that will build connection. If you just go, well, I disagreed, I'm not going to do anything with that, I'm going to shut this down. Yeah, that's, you've destroyed that relationship.
Yeah,
and made it a lot harder for yourself.
And there should be disagreements, and there should be tough discussions. I know for me, when my kids were going through school, when there was an issue that I completely disagreed with the school on, I was straight up there. And there was lots of things that I disagreed. And like, a lot of people was like, but you're a teacher, why are you disagreeing with that? I said, because I am a teacher. Because I don't see the benefit. Why are you making my kid in year 7 do, half an hour, or prescribing half an hour homework for every subject, when they've done all they could to get through the day? And what is the homework for? Why are you trying to teach them at home when they've got no cognitive capacity to take on any more information?
It's a really funny one, homework, because we're stuck in that if we're going to have students prepare for big summative assessments like exams and tests and what have you, like there's not enough time in the day for them to be able to address that. Like they will have to do some of it at home. But I just wonder, like with a lot of homework tasks, like it seems a bit performative. Like this is showing the parents that there's stuff happening. Look, they're doing something when they could be out running around or, doing some of that real learning that we were talking about earlier. It's that relationships, belonging, and meaning. It's that framework for doing things a little bit different within the system we have. Because I think, like many, I started by thinking, let's just strip everything down and start again. And this system sucks and let's not. But that's not, like, it's such an absurd pie in the sky idea that that would happen and that we'd get rid of it. Like we're not going to get rid of it. And two, that I would have enough voice to be able to lead that charge. We've got to work within the bounds that we've been given. But that's again, I think that's the job of the current teacher, is to find where the wiggle room is and just stretch it and make it bigger and
be willing to fail.
Yeah, and be willing to fail. And I think that's something that potentially is not being set up super well in university. I can't say that, and it's certainly not like from experience. And it's not a critique of lecturers or anything. I think it's a similar situation. Like you're stuck trying to do, what you're trying to do. But my bachelor's degree, like I was very fortunate to do a bachelor's degree in education, which is not as common anymore. Certainly from the new staff that I have mentored or work alongside, it's, that bachelor's gave me 4 years of exposure to schools in amongst all of the other kind of theory and prac stuff that you do at uni. But every single one of those 4 years, I was in a school for a period of time, and it just scaled up as we went until the last semester of the 4th year. I think it was like 8 or 9 weeks in a school. And so the majority, basically a whole term. And that showed me everything that wasn't quite right in that previous 3 years. And it showed me what the job was and what I needed to do and how to change all of that theory into something that actually works in the classroom. And I think that when students are not getting that extensive experience and they're doing the Masters of Teaching and they're perhaps, it's been impacted by COVID and, people are still trying to catch up on their teaching rounds and things, and whatever it is, a lot of new staff are coming into school and the first time that they're genuinely at the head of the classroom is their first day. And so you've had no experience turning that theory into something that's practical. You've had very little experience with a student saying, nah, I'm not doing that. And so it creates barriers immediately. And it makes the job, what I imagine, to be incredibly difficult, because even with, 14, 15 years experience, it is super hard. Sometimes the best class, that I've ever had, I get them in the last period on a day when they've just had to sit and all day they've just had to slog it out. And then I get them and it's just chaos and it's mayhem and it stretches my ability. If I didn't have, 14 years of kind of finding my way, what a horrible hour.
Yeah.
Where you're just fighting kids and they don't want to fight. They don't want to impact you and you don't want to impact them, but you end up on opposite aisles of the battle. And it is a battle. And then, parents get involved and it's just one of those things, are we setting up people for success? Are we setting up new teachers? Are we setting up experienced teachers? Are we setting up parents? Are we setting up the students? Are we doing anything that is connecting them to what learning is? Or are we just kind of keeping in a holding pattern because that's how we did it. And that's how our parents did it. And we're not sure what else to do, or whether if we do something a little bit different, somebody's going to come down on us.
Yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it? Like, I mean, I was fortunate when I did my so I did a design degree followed on by a teaching degree.
Mm.
Sorry, there's just some background noise there. But for that year of my teaching degree, I was in a classroom for 10 weeks. So 10 weeks out of an academic university year, it's a huge chunk. And I was learning how to, when the kid goes, nah, when the teacher is late for class, when everything goes wrong, and then there's you plan your day, and then there's a sports carnival.
Yeah.
Or an excursion, so you're missing half the class. So it's like, how do you, I learned how to pivot. I learned how to be flexible, and I was taught by these veteran teachers, like, just relax, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Like, they'll be fine. And it's one of those things where I definitely know Matt Green said it. It's like, you don't remember what you were taught; you remember how you felt.
Yeah.
And that's what, one of my goals as a teacher is to, and I know that they might not even remember my name. They might just go, oh, there's that tech teacher. But you know what? I always felt valuable in his class. He always saw me. He always listened to me. And that's part of part of a school. And I think schools are great. I think there's many things that need to be changed. Some stuff needs to be chucked away. Some stuff just needs to be polished a little bit. But some of the other stuff just needs to be kept exactly the same. But schools are such a great place for community to teach these young people, these children, how to be people, how to interact with each other, how to have a disagreement and resolve it, how to fall over and get back up again and learn. What did they learn from falling down? We need to give them those safe spaces within an environment that will encourage. And there'll be consequences for negative behavior, but those consequences will be not punitive. They'll be, okay, this is for your benefit. This is how we can help you grow. And I mean, that's what I'd love, and that's what I try and do. Does it always work? Absolutely not.
No, but it's the trying, I think. And that's when, I think about the best teachers that I have worked alongside. They're the ones that give everything a go. And that's the mindset to be in, is the trying. It's every day trying to be a little bit better than the next day. And like we said earlier, that's how you role model what a future citizen needs to be like. Because again, we can't possibly predict what some of these young people, the world they're going into. And so they need to understand how to work together, what their individual strengths are within that community, and then, how to roll with the punches a little bit.
Yeah.
And
how to have resilience. I think that's missing. I mean, we all want the best for our children. We want to make the path as easy as possible. But I think there are times where it's made too easy. And so when they do come up against failure, or when they do come up against hardship, an obstacle that actually they have to work to get over, they've lost that. And I think that needs to be brought back. No, you've got to work for this. You've got to, you've got to feel
it's resilience in that context, because I think about some of the experiences that some of the young people I have worked with do work with. Like, they're incredibly resilient, but they're resilient out in the world. When they walk through the school gate, it's like they don't see that being aligned. A challenge outside where they have presented with A and B and they need to work on it does not translate to in the classroom. And that's that sense of meaning. Like, how does this connect to something outside that's bigger than both of us? And I think it's in the way that we teach resilience as well. Like, you can't be like, I truly believe you can't be resilient in a challenging moment. That's not what resilience is. It's you manage it. It's fight or flight. You're just going for it. It's when you reflect, that's when you build resilience. It's you look back and you go, these are the decisions I made, and this is how I'm going to use it in the future. And then that informs your decision making. Like a resilient mindset is not built in tough times, it's built after tough times. Yet we talk to students about like, oh, when there's a challenge, you've got to be resilient. That's not how it works. When there's a tough time and you are stuck and you need to just get through it, like that's your job. Get through it so that you can look back on it and then build some resilience for the next challenge. It's
sometimes just grit your teeth, get on with it, and for me,
they don't know how to.
For me being,
and it's our fault.
Because the way I was raised, and I am that stereotypical Gen X type of, both parents work. We were, we had our own key. We walked home from school. We had to look after ourselves. But we had to, by looking after ourselves, we're contributing to the family. By the time I was 12, I had to be able to cook 3 main meals, iron a shirt, use the washing machine, mow the lawn, do all these things, because that was part of being in my family. That was part of contributing. It's like, well, someone's got to do it. And that someone is you, because that's where your feet are at the moment. And I sometimes get in trouble from others for when I just say to my students, just get on with it. Stop your whining, get on with it, and we'll discuss it later. But your task now is to do this.
And it's, just, we don't need to jump out of our comfort zone. We just need to be stretching it. And that's what 13 years of school should do. Not necessarily 13, but if we're thinking about, foundation to year 12 and wherever you're in or out within that, but the whole time you should be stretching, because that's how you grow. And we're very like black or white. It's you jump out and you go for it, or you stay in comfort. And this is where students are stuck. They don't want to jump out, and it's hard to coax them out. So it's just about little steps and celebrating success. Like, I'm all for the big ceremony at the end of the year where we celebrate our big academic achievers. I think that, what some of these students do and the way they do it and the sacrifices they make as a young person to do that, because it's what they want to do, hopefully. Sometimes it's what the parents want, but that is worth celebrating. But it's our job as teachers to be in the classroom and celebrate every other day that's not that assembly, so that your audience feel like they're on their own journey and they've been recognized in the meantime. They're not just a passive audience member to Mr., Mrs., whoever successful up there.
Yeah.
Like, it's school, like learning is not a competition, because it can't be, because the only participant in my learning journey is me.
Yeah.
And I will have a discussion about how I'm going, and I will leverage the knowledge of people around me, but then we'll part ways, and I'll take a bit of what you've told me, and hopefully you will take a bit of what I've told you, but then I'm going to apply it to what I'm doing next. And so I'm running this race by myself. Yet education has turned it into, well, I'm now sprinting, like at the start of the Melbourne Marathon, and I'm getting bashed around by everyone who won't give me space to even get a light jog up. And it's that sense of competition has no place in learning. And that's where this focus back on people. What is the situation that these people are in? They're not just students, they're people. They're not staff, they're people. And the parents, they're tough as some of the, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm great at having challenging conversations. I still will sit and, think about, I wish I didn't have to make this phone call, and I wonder what I'm going to get on the other side of the line today.
Yeah.
But you have to pick up the phone, and it's just another person on the other side of it. And if we can shift back to that and understanding that, everyone would like to be on the same side, then, it comes back to caring for young people. And that's what the job is. and what it should be. And that's why I love connection, because that's at the forefront. This is all about helping kids to develop a passion for learning so that they go and become obsessed like me.
Yeah. And want to, they want to have that curious mind. They want to,
Yes.
we talk about, we're stretching ourselves. Those phone calls, we stretch ourselves. Those emails home, it's a stretch sometimes. But then that part of stretch, and what we want, I guess, what we want the students to do, I know I do, especially in a creative subject, is to not be safe, but to push, just to go, to have that curiosity of what if, how about, and it's like, let's, one guy I worked with, he goes, as long as you're failing forward, I don't care what you do in the classroom, just keep failing forward. Let's keep that curiosity going, and like yourself, it builds a passion, a drive, obsession, your words.
Yeah, it is. 100%.
But I guess that's where we are. So I mean, this is the first time we had a conversation, and I think it's probably not going to be the last conversation. And I think we're running on two very similar paths when it comes to what school is about.
And I think you'll see it, in this conversation. Like, I think if there was an A and a B, like a start point and an end point of this episode, then it's just as you described, kind of this situation working with the young people you work with at the moment. Like, it's not a linear discussion. We've kind of been all over the shop, and
Definitely.
and like, I don't know. Well, I hope it's good to listen to, but it's like that's the excitement of talking about, with a little bit of change, what we could be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that these are where, a staff room conversation about our own what if, after school's perfect, you sit with somebody and you talk about all the what ifs, and then you go, geez, like, we should be going home.
Yeah.
To our families, but you just get carried away with it. And that's because within these schools, there's so many passionate people. And I think the media might make it out like all of the passionate teachers are leaving. And a lot of the brilliant, brilliant people that I've worked with have left for various reasons, all great reasons, but there's still a lot of passion left. And I think conversations like this one, where we've kind of just probably lost the plot a little bit in the middle, but loved having it, and have felt like we've contributed to something. Like, I just want that for the students.
Well,
I want them to get a bit lost and feel like at the end of the day, they've contributed to something.
yeah, and that's part of the drive for why I'm doing this podcast and why I'm just chatting with as many people as I can. Because, like you said, the media put out a lot of, that's how they sell. They sell with the negative.
Mm.
I'm trying to put some stuff out there that counteracts that gives a positive spin. And, as you know, in high school, nothing's private.
Yeah.
Students will find you. They'll track you down, and they'll do all sorts of stuff. And I've got a number of students who listen to this podcast regularly. They're just like, and I'm just like, guys, why are you listening to it? Why do you do it? I said, it's not really targeted for you as such. No, it's really interesting, like finding out about these teachers and about different things that are happening. Yeah, it's good. It's great. So I was like, okay.
Yeah. And it's the connection to you too. Like, this is something I think, going back to what Matt Green said, and he's said the same thing to me. You remember the feeling, and that's connection. Your students wanting to, or knowing that you've got this other avenue and then seeking it out. They're doing it because they feel connected to you, and it's more than just whatever's being taught in the lesson. It's connected on a human level, and that's what we're after. We want that sense of empathic curiosity. We want people who are curious about people, so that they'll go out and connect with them. They'll go out and seek to understand if we're going to enter into some kind of Skynet, Terminator style world, then people being connected to people is the way to make sure that our human way of life, if that's the best thing to call it, is secure. And we've just got to keep being or focusing on things that make us human.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think there's a lot of great things in education that do that, but there's a lot of stuff that works against it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think, being I try and be the eternal optimist, and I try and look at one of the things I tell one of my children is that look for the joy. Look for the joy in each day. And it could just be a ray of sunshine. And that could be just the one thing in a terrible day, but just find one thing. And I think with these conversations and with what you're doing in your sphere that is getting larger and larger, because the passion that you have and the drive that you have for that, I think it'll just naturally grow even bigger. But I think if we can keep this going, if we can keep this human connection going and ignore the clickbait, I don't think we'll ever get to a Skynet type of thing. I think the human connection is that people want to connect with each other. They just don't know how.
Yep.
And to a certain extent, that's they've lost the ability to push past that uncomfortable conversation that, you want to make a friend. You're in you go to a new school, you go to a new job. You've got to make a conversation. You've got to push yourself, and you've got to go, okay, hey, I'm Phil, or I'm Matt, and,
Oh, I'm awful for it. I love it when somebody starts the conversation. Then I can't stop. But I'm horrendous at starting it because I go through the what ifs in my head. What if the first thing I say, I just make an absolute goose of myself? Like, some people you only get one chance with, and if they are the first one to hold the hand out and go, hello, I'm just like, oh, thank goodness. Like, yeah, let's go, let's chat, because I can do it now. But we've lost it a little bit. I wouldn't say that we've lost it completely, but connection is a word that's been hijacked a little bit, and I think social media has done a little bit of that. For all of the good that social media can do, it's perhaps reduced our ability to work in the same room together.
Yeah,
which is a shame, but
we have
we'll
an
get.
ease of connection in the sense that we can, you're in Melbourne, I'm on the Gold Coast, but we are talking to each other. So that's a fantastic thing. But if I'm just looking at old mate on Instagram, am I really connecting with him? No. I'm seeing what they're doing. I'm not making a connection. It's that conversation, even though we're thousands of kilometres apart, we have made that effort to connect.
Yeah,
it's cost us something. It's cost us an hour with our families.
Yep.
We've said yes to this, and by saying yes to this, we've said no to that. And thankfully, we've both got very supportive wives who will let us do this.
And isn't that just that's the model of connection I come back to? I really don't think it matters what the context is. This model that I have come up with of the journey and relationships, belonging, and meaning is the path I take with my family every day. It's establishing that true connection, and we can do the same thing with our students. It's just it requires constant work. You can't just establish a relationship in the first week of school and go, this will be good for 12 months.
Yeah, no,
let's keep going. So, and it's there. It's in our brains. We want it. Sometimes we don't know that we want it, but we definitely need it. So that's why it's my focus, and I'll talk to anyone about it if they start
the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I appreciate your time. We didn't even touch on half the stuff that I actually, well, not even half, probably 3/4 of the stuff that I actually wanted to ask you. But what an enriching conversation. Yeah, I wanted to talk about more about creativity, design thinking, Lego, all the different stuff that you've studied and what you're actually doing now with all the ACEL awards and it's a hot educationalist leader and all these things that sort of circumstance that have led to that. But we'll have to save that for another conversation for sure. But I value your time and I respect that you've got a lot to do, especially wrapping up term and 3-year-olds do not care what time you go to bed. They will
No,
still get up.
yeah, and she's the boss.
Yeah, yes, my youngest daughter, she had, fire in her belly, that one, that's for sure. So, but if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to go about doing that? Website, social media? Is it LinkedIn? Is it, we met on LinkedIn, but what are the best ways to get in contact with you?
I think if it's just like the cold call type email, then I think the website definitely has a contact form, which I'm pretty good at getting back to fairly quickly. So that's mattpittman.com.au. But otherwise, I've got Instagram at Matt Luke Pittman, but LinkedIn is probably as you said, Phil, that's where we came across each other. It's I like to post and put things on LinkedIn because for the most part, it's people wanting to chat about this kind of stuff and not having, the ability to jump on a call with, hundreds of people. That just provides a really good avenue. So yeah, I do lots of things on the website, but LinkedIn is probably the place. And if you want to get in touch, you can definitely catch me there. But yeah, look, it's been a pleasure. Like I'll definitely come back. There's always lots more to talk about, and I really appreciate being able to go from from listener to guest.
Yeah, no,
Because I really love what you're doing. I think it's the this lack of set structure works for me.
yeah, I like to keep it as organic as I possibly can because that's where conversations and relationship and connection happen. In
Yep.
the often in the mundane, but it's where the best things happen. A conversation online between two strangers, who knows where it's going to go? But it's worked exceptionally well, and we'll definitely stay in contact. And thanks for listening for all my other stuff. I appreciate it.
No, it's good listening on the way in. I think like some of the guests they've changed my lessons more than once on the drive in, which is a bit chaotic for me. But it's a valuable resource. So I appreciate as a listener your time in putting it together.
Thank you. Well, look, it wouldn't be the Tattoo Teacher podcast if I didn't ask you this one last question: do you have any tattoos, Matt?
No, I don't. And I was obviously I knew that question was coming. It's lots of ideas, but nothing that's grabbed me enough to go and make it happen. But it's always it's always on the cards. It's one of the cards.
Oh well, that's all right. Well, I'll let you. And mind you, it takes time. But if you ever want one and you got a really big one, take a book. But Matt, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate everything that you're doing for education, for the effort that you're putting in, and for the betterment of especially your students, but then also for us teachers who are following along on the journey.
No worries. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy the last 2 weeks of your term.
Yeah, I can't wait.
See you, Matt.
See ya.